The town of Dry Creek lay silent under the orange smear of a setting sun, its dust-blown main street echoing with the lonely creak of swinging signs and the jangle of spurs against the hard-packed ground. The year was 1884, and in this far edge of the New Mexico territory, justice came late, if it ever came at all. Wind swept through the crooked boardwalks, stirring up a fine mist of grit that caught the last of the dying light. Inside the Silver Spur Saloon, laughter and music spilled out in rough wave as a man shouting over whiskey, a tin piano clinking out a tune, boots stomping on the warped floorboards. But beyond the drunken noise, just outside those bat-winged doors, a woman struggled, her arms caught by two rough men whose breath reeked of tobacco and sheep rye. Her bonnet had fallen to the dust, her hair unbound and wild in the dry wind. "Let me go!" she cried, her voice sharp, trembling with fear. "I said let me go!" One man sneered, tightening his grip on her wrist, dragging her toward the swinging doors. "You'll dance for the boys, sweetheart," he hissed, "and if you're lucky, maybe earn yourself a drink." The crowd inside barely noticed as she was shoved through, stumbling into the haze of cigar smoke and sweat. For a moment, the room quieted, eyes turned toward her, curious, hungry, cruel. The piano fell silent, then came the laughter, rolling like thunder. Far down the street, a lone rider slowed his horse. His name was Luke Callahan, a cowboy with dust in his boots and a scar across his jaw that told more stories than he ever would. He had spent the past 3 months driving cattle up from Texas, and all he wanted was a drink and a quiet corner to forget the miles behind him. But when he heard that scream, raw and helpless, slicing through the evening air, something in him shifted. His horse, a black mare named Juniper, stamped the ground, sensing his tension. Luke's hand brushed the grip of his Colt. He turned his head toward the Silver Spur, eyes narrowing. The scream came again, muffled now, followed by raucous laughter. Without another thought, he swung off his horse and strode through the dust, spurs jingling with each deliberate step. Inside, the woman had been forced onto the small stage where saloon girls usually danced. She was different, her dress modest, her face pale with terror. The men jeered, some clapping, others tossing coins at her feet. One of the drunks reached for her arm again, but before his hand found her, the doors slammed open with a crash. The noise died instantly. Every head turned. There he stood, Luke Callahan, a broad-shouldered, hat low over his brow, eyes dark as storm clouds. "Let her go," he said quietly, his voice low but steady, carrying the weight of a man who meant every word. A few of the patrons laughed nervously. "Who's this hero?" someone snickered. "The bigger Mona, the one who dragged her Enos spat tobacco juice and stepped forward. "Ain't your business, cowboy. Go get yourself a drink and stay out of ours." Luke didn't move. His hand rested at his side, near his gun. The silence stretched, heavy, waiting to snap. Then, faster than a blink, the man reached for his pistol. But Luke was faster. A flash, a roar, a puff of blue smoke, and the saloon echoed with the sharp crack of justice. The man dropped, clutching his shoulder, howling in pain. Chaos erupted. Chairs flew, men shouted, bottles shattered. The woman ducked behind the piano, her heart hammering in her chest as bullets tore through the haze. Luke moved like a shadow, his aim true, his steps calm amid the storm. When the smoke cleared, 2 men lay bleeding, others groaning, and the rest scrambled for the back door. Luke holstered his gun and turned toward the woman. "You all right, ma'am?" he asked, his voice gentler now. She nodded, though tears streaked the dust on her cheeks. "Yeah, I didn't mean to cause trouble," she stammered. "They took me off the road, said I owed them for passing through their land." Luke's jaw tightened. "You don't owe anyone a damn thing." He offered her his hand, and after a hesitant pause, she took it. Her hand was trembling, cold. He led her out through the swinging doors into the cooling night air, the stars just beginning to show over the desert horizon. Outside, Juniper whinnied softly. Luke turned to her. "You got a name, ma'am?" She swallowed, her voice barely a whisper. Evelyn Hart." He nodded once. "Well, Miss Hart, you best come with me. This town's got no mercy for decent folk." She hesitated, glancing back at the saloon, then at the quiet stranger who'd risked his life for her. Something in his eyes steady, solemn, and kinda made her trust him. "Where would we go?" she asked. He smiled faintly, just one corner of his mouth lifting, far enough till the stars feel safe again. They rode out under the fading glow of lanterns, leaving behind the echo of gunfire and drunken voices. The desert stretched wide before them, an ocean of dust and shadows, silvered under moonlight. Evelyn rode side saddle behind him, clutching the edge of his coat, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. Neither spoke for a while. The wind carried only the sound of crickets and the distant howl of a coyote. When she finally found her voice, she asked softly, "Why did you help me?" Luke's gaze stayed on the road ahead. "Because no one helped my sister," he said, his tone low, rough with old pain. "And I swore I'd never ride past a cry for help again." The words hung between them, heavy as truth. Evelyn felt tears sting her eyes. Not of fear this time, but of something deeper, as something that whispered of fate and second chances. They reached a small ridge overlooking the valley, where Luke dismounted and built a fire. The light flickered against his face, revealing lines of weariness and quiet strength. She watched him from across the flames, wondering about the life behind those eyes, the stories buried in his silence. He handed her a blanket and some water. "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow we'll find you somewhere safe." But as she lay under the stars, her heart stirred with the strange sense of calm, as though safety had already found her, in the shape of the man who'd fought the whole saloon for her. Night deepened, and the fire crackled softly. Luke sat with his back to a rock, keeping watch. His gaze drifted to her sleeping form, her hair glinting like copper in the firelight, her face peaceful now after so much terror. Something in him softened. He hadn't felt that warmth in years, maybe never. The desert wind brushed through the camp, whispering secrets of the land, of old wounds and new beginnings. By dawn, when the first light broke over the mesas, Evelyn stirred. Luke had already saddled the horses. "We should move before the law comes sniffing around," he said. "They don't much care who started it." She nodded, rising, her dress still torn at the hem. "Where will we go?" she asked again. "There's a ranch north of here," he replied. "A friend owes me a favor." "You'll be safe there." She hesitated. "And you?" He looked at her for a long moment. "I'll see you settled, then I'll ride on." But something in her heart clenched at that, the thought of him riding away, vanishing into the horizon like a dream. She wanted to thank him, to say something that could capture the weight of what he'd done, but words failed. Instead, she touched his arm lightly. "You saved me," she said. "That's more than anyone's ever done." He tipped his hat, a quiet smile in his eyes. "Just did what was right, ma'am." They rode together once more, side by side through the wild, endless land. Behind them lay a saloon that would whisper their story for years to come, a tale of a woman who cried for help, and a cowboy who answered with his gun and his heart. And somewhere, far ahead, under the blazing sun of the frontier, destiny waited, silent, patient, and ready to write the rest of their story.